Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another Inner Hour. I appreciate your being here. Hope you're having a good weekend so far. Um, I'm going to, we have a couple people having trouble logging in, so I'm hoping they can manage to do that. Um, I'm going to go ahead and start as I usually do by lighting a little candle here, which is just sort of my process of kind of centering and focusing for uh, before we start. So. um, I advise you, if you haven't done that, just give yourself a few seconds, a minute, or whatever to kind of get quiet and let go of the things that have occupied your attention during the day and just be present here and now. Oh, so I have a little, this is my little taper candle that I light. It was kind of drafty in here the last time, and it's got a lot of melty stuff on it. Anyway, for those of you who haven't been here before, I think you all have, but we do a weekly program here from 7 to 8 p.m. on Sunday evenings called the Inner Hour, and it's a contemplative program. Typically, but not always, it consists of a series um, that um, on a particular nature of spiritual practice or teaching. And the series vary in length depending on what all material I'm trying to cover and also what kind of interest response I get from you folks. Typically they're about a month and we switch topics. So we're starting a new one tonight anyway, and this series is called The Nature of Consciousness. And as usual, you are welcome to participate anytime by getting my attention. You can do that by finding the place on your device where you turn on your audio and you can just say something and get my attention if there's a pause. Or if you have a typical Zoom screen toward the bottom, there'll be a menu thing, and in part of the menu bar will say raise hand, and it makes a little icon for those of you who are watching the participants list on your own. I'm doing that on mine, so you'll see next to Stephen and Ani just did it as well. You'll see a hand raised, um, and then you can take it back down also.
Stephen,
Right.
it may also just say react with a heart icon. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
yeah.
yes, you can get it that way. If you don't see the raise hand option, if you hit the react button, it'll open up all those settings and you'll see it. But most of you know how to do that anyway. So that's just a little note. So you're welcome to do that anytime. I'm going to just cover a few things in particular, kind of to introduce the subject. And if you have questions while I'm doing that, you're welcome to get my attention then. Otherwise, after I've kind of covered a couple of things, I'll sort of open it up to the group for your comments and questions, or I may ask you some questions and see what you think of things. It's kind of how the process goes. So um, I hope you enjoy this evening. It is one of the services that our group ministry called One by One offers. So if you're not aware of what One by One is and what all it does, email us or text me or get a hold of us, and we'll be glad to give you more information. It's 100, I mean, we have no funding of any kind except donations. So any and all donations are really very much appreciated to help us do the kind of programs like this and live programs that we do. So, so I guess to begin with, consciousness. So what is the nature of consciousness is a
Hey,
question.
Stephen.
Yes. Hey, Liz.
It's Liz. I'm just here. I'm just paying attention real fast in enough time to interrupt you. Hey, if if somebody's new and they don't have your email and they don't know how to contact you, how would they find your email or
Good
your text?
question. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. That's a good question. Um, so the simplest thing to do is to email us, and that way we also have your email contact information, so you can get mailings about local events and online events and all that sort of stuff. We have a calendar comes out once a month, eCal, and that's just one by one, ONEBY, ONE, one by one community at gmail.com. So if you could just do that and give us your contact information, whatever you want us to have, the email, obviously, cell phone if you like, so we can text things. I'll trade you my cell phone number and so on. That's
And you
probably,
send people lots of spam?
and what?
You send people lots of spam and unwanted emails?
Yeah, we solicit money like almost every 10 minutes, and we
Amazing.
sell our email list to everybody we can
Oh,
find. No, we don't do any of that stuff. But
my quick question is, if somebody finds you on YouTube, is there a way to find your email
yeah,
address on the YouTube link
yeah,
site?
there
Okay,
is.
great.
And then
Thank
also
you.
we're on Facebook as well, One by One community on Facebook. And on
Oh,
there you can find our YouTube channel too, and our contact information and all of that sort of stuff. Good question though. Thank you, Liz. I assume everybody knows that stuff. So yeah, thanks for
Steve, and I'm just full of it tonight. So thank you.
that.
Good
You're
questions.
welcome.
Good questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Liz. Um, so yeah, so back to consciousness. The it's a subject that philosophers have discussed for, I don't know, countless ages. Just what is that? It moves into the spiritual realm in terms of, is consciousness an aspect of the soul? Is there such a thing as a soul or spirit? Is that the same as consciousness? Is consciousness the same as awareness? Or are those any different from one another? Um, is consciousness a function of the body? Lots of medical people and brain researchers in particular are these days discussing the nature of consciousness, many of them being convinced that it's something that arises as a result of brain chemical interaction and neuron and synapses interaction. So in that case, their assumption is that you have consciousness while you're alive, and once you're dead, it's done. There isn't any more. A number of researchers, including a couple of prominent doctors now, have books out like Lucid Dying and other books of that nature that have done thousands and thousands and thousands of studies of people who have physically, medically, biologically died, and then by whatever means come back and were conscious and alive again. And they're discovering some really interesting medical facets to what we've called death, and that it isn't what medical science has thought for a long time, and that the body is capable of, including the brain, which typically they say 6 minutes or so without oxygen, you're done. Turns out that's not true, and that there's a lot of possibility of reanimation of cells and tissue much longer after biologic medical death than they thought there was. They've interviewed people who have conscious recollection of what happened during that interval where they were dead, and found some really surprising things. That research was done by many people, including Dr. Moody and others, decades ago. There's a whole new body and much bigger body of research now if you're interested in that aspect. And there's some surprising similarities between people of all backgrounds and all religious and and atheistic viewpoints that have almost identical or very similar themes in their after-death experience. So that's intriguing. But so we can talk about some of those things in this series if anybody's interested in doing that. And then there's other things that we have where we talk about things in circles like this, and spiritual communities and religions talk about things like higher consciousness, soul consciousness, self-realization, pure awareness versus consciousness, mindfulness. There's all these different aspects that kind of relate to what is the nature of consciousness that are part of spiritual studies and now biological studies as well. And then there's, of course, in mystical literature, particularly of the West, there's things like Christ consciousness. So what's that? Is that just like made up stuff? Is that something? What is it? How does it work? How do you attain it? And then of course in the Eastern Buddhist traditions, there's Buddha consciousness or the Buddha nature. So what is that? Is that the same thing as Christ consciousness? Is it the same as everybody else's awareness? It's a vast field of study that gets very complex and frankly, probably very confusing in many ways for many of us who study that. There's a usefulness in studying it for sure, in terms of increasing our self-awareness and increasing our potentially, at least increasing our understanding of what consciousness is and how it works. And by the way, that it does by all kinds of observational evidence and sort of intuitive evidence, if you want to call it that, consciousness is not limited to human beings. My dog certainly has consciousness. Our domestic pets do. Perhaps different degrees of consciousness, but certainly are conscious. And in some cases, those pets don't know so much about things like fish, how much self-awareness they would have. I don't know that they don't, but I don't know that they do. But certainly dogs and cats and horses have self-awareness. So they understand themselves as something other than the other selves and things they're relating to. So is all that aspects of soul? Is it not? Is the consciousness in the animal kingdom the same as, different than, a different degree of the same kind of consciousness we have? So as you can see, kind of a broad field, and certainly we can't do an exhaustive study of that field by any stretch, no matter how long the series goes. But I thought it might be interesting, and a couple of you had suggested things in the nature of what's Christ consciousness? What is the Christ? Because we just did a series on Messiah. What is that? Is Christ just Jesus? Is that the one and only Christ ever? Is Christ a self-realized person? Is Christ a great teacher or an avatar? What is that? For some of you, if you've studied certain Western esoteric literature, it's not found in a lot of other literature, but things like the planetary hierarchy, the spiritual hierarchy, Alice Bailey's works, Urantia books, different things like that, you might have come across the term of the Christ office, or the office of the Christ, or the planetary office of the Christ. So there's all these different questions that arise in this arena of study. And as I said, we can't get to all of them. So I'm going to just talk about a couple. And then if you have some in particular that are of interest to you, that you'd like us to have more discussion on, I'll certainly do that. And if I don't know about it, then you can discuss it, or somebody else maybe here in the group would know about it and they can discuss it. So that's kind of my starting point. I'm going to add just a couple more things, and then I'll sort of pause and see if you have anything you want to add or questions you want to ask at this point. In one sense, consciousness is simple and pretty straightforward because you're experiencing it right now. Unless you're absolutely asleep, and then you're probably still experiencing something. So in a sense, we all know what it is because we live with it every day. We have every single day since we've drawn breath. We're conscious. So we have some familiarity over a lifetime of experience with being conscious. And we also have a lifetime of experience of being what we call unconscious. So there's a distinction there. And we can talk about that. That leads us into a different thing called awareness, which in most circles is considered not the same thing as consciousness. To kind of give you an example, if you are conscious in the sense of your prefrontal lobes are working and you're conscious of listening to my voice and seeing my image and conscious of the room around you and so on, that's, everyday normal consciousness, you have that. Sometimes you experience exalted states of consciousness, which might be called higher consciousness, where you have a direct understanding of, a direct insight into, or direct perception of something beyond your physical knowledge base that was not provided by sensory input. You suddenly understand something you didn't understand before. You suddenly, quite literally, see everything differently. Everything gets super clear and the color's super bright and everything kind of gels and makes sense and you get it. And usually that doesn't last very long. It's like, oh, this is what all the great mystics and speech talked about. And usually that's a very transient state, but it's not a normal everyday state. It's a kind of exaggerated or expanded state of consciousness or higher consciousness. And then we have these things called unconsciousness, where you have an accident, for example, and knock your head and you are unconscious. You don't know what's going on. You're not aware of your body. You don't know what people are doing to you. You don't know what happened. Often when you wake up, you don't remember what happened. Uh, and then we have the unconsciousness of sleep. However, of course, in that same state of unconsciousness, we have multiple sleep levels or types of experiences. And so while we're unconscious to the body, we're not aware of who might or might not be sitting or lying next to us while we're asleep. We're not aware of something going on elsewhere in the house. We might not hear a siren going by on the street outside. We're not aware of the physical. And so we're unconscious to it. And sometimes in deep sleep states, we're conscious of nothing. We have apparently zero awareness in that moment of anything. And when we return, we have zero recollection of anything having happened in that state. Deep meditation states, similarly, we sometimes come back from a really wonderful deep meditation and say, wow, that was great. And somebody says to you, what happened? And you go, I have no idea. Well, where were you? I don't know. What did you see? Well, nothing. Well, what did you remember? Nothing. But somehow there's this profound sense that it was this very deep, peaceful, connected space, and yet there's nothing to it that you can recount. So we have these different kinds of things that we call unconscious, and yet even within them, there's some awareness. So this awareness aspect seems to be something broader and more expansive than consciousness. Almost all instances of consciousness that we can think of have objects involved in them. I named a few. I'm conscious of the people in the room with me. I'm conscious of the lighting in the room. I'm conscious of my desk that you can't see. I'm conscious of, my body and how it feels. I'm conscious of what I'm saying and thinking and so on. Awareness. So what is that? There is a sense of, you can be aware of something. Let's say, just for example, not a great example, but let's just say, for example, you have this awareness that comes to you with no observable sensory input. Whoa, something is happening. Something really big is happening, and you don't know what it is. And then you turn on the television and you see airplanes flying into the buildings on 9/11. Big change in the world, big impact on multiple millions of people. And you somehow sensed a shift in the force, Luke, but you weren't conscious of what it was, but you had an awareness, a sense of this. You have an awareness that there's something about to happen, but you're not sure what, and then something significant does. Or you have an awareness of something related to a particular person. Oh, I should get a hold of somebody. I need to get a hold of Michael. I need to get a hold of whoever. I need to get a hold of Ani. And you do, and then something really significant is happening that you didn't have any conscious knowledge of. So there seems to be some distinction in the sense that consciousness seems to have objects and specificity involved in it, whereas awareness is more generic and much more expansive and much more inclusive. Awareness seems to include not only conscious states, but unconscious states and semi-conscious states and higher conscious states. And all of that is kind of held in the container of consciousness. One way it's been described is consciousness is, I'll start over, that awareness is the container and consciousness is what happens to you within the container. The other aspect that seems to be different is that consciousness is quite subjective almost always, if not always, and awareness is not so much. It's more non-specific to you. It's more expansive, and it's more objective in that sense. So those are just a few of many, many, many differences that philosophers and mystics have tried to describe. And if you yourself, who you probably don't consider yourself a great philosopher or great mystic, probably, but you have probably had some kind of experience, some meditation experience, some experience in prayer, some experience just in a really deep moment of connection in your life to perhaps another human being or to nature or to an animal that has this sort of transcendent quality to it. And it's a very, very meaningful experience to you. And then you try to describe that to somebody else who did not have that experience with you, or perhaps has not had that kind of experience at all. It's frustrating because you can't do it. You can't convey it. You can have something as simple as a dream and go, "Oh my God, I had this great dream and it was so cool." And somebody says, "Well, tell me." And you describe the dream and you even tell them things that happened in it because you can remember them. And they're like, "Yeah. So you were sitting by a lake and you were talking to this person and you saw stars above you and okay." But energetically, it was really significant to you in the dream. And it was very profound in the sense of connectedness and oneness you experienced was very profound, but you can't convey that. So it's very frustrating for people involved in spiritual pursuits and understanding to try to really describe these things because they're essentially transphysical. They're metaphysical, they're beyond the physical. They transcend that kind of consciousness. They transcend three-dimensional relationship. They transcend three-dimensional thinking. They transcend linear thinking. And so while we try to grab at analogies and reference points and symbols to kind of convey it, we don't really have the tools and the language to do it adequately. We're always left sort of feeling that there are things we can't explain. Or you have faith in something. You have faith, you're a Buddhist and you have faith in the teachings of Buddha, or you're a Christian and you believe in Jesus and you have faith in Jesus. And not only do you believe in Jesus, but you have experiential basis to that. Now, not everybody does. I'm not saying everybody has an experiential base to their faith. I would say most don't, but many do. And so if you do believe, let's say you believe in Jesus and you have experiences that relate to that, where you feel his presence in your life, where you have some kind of connection with him, where you feel him, if you will, moving in your life and doing things, or Buddha or whoever it may be that you're feeling connected to. Try to explain that to somebody who doesn't get it, let alone believe it. It's really difficult to do. It's very frustrating, or can be very frustrating. And so we're all in this arena where we know things and we experience things, and yet there's a great deal we don't know and that we haven't experienced. And even what we have experienced, it's hard to convey, it's hard to explain. So there does seem to be some difference in this, again, the state of general, all-encompassing awareness. As I'm sitting here, I'm aware of more than I can say. And I'm conscious of things that I can say. There's a light over here. There's a light up there. There's a desk that you can't see. And see, people can be conscious of things that others can't. Like I'm conscious of this desk. That's the desk I'm pounding on. I can see it. I can feel it. I know what it looks like. You don't. So does that mean I'm lying to you or I'm deceived because I can see something you can't? No, you can't see it. I can. Conversely, there are things that I'm not seeing in your home right now that you can see. So we don't all see the same things. And so it gets very involved. Now, the very last piece, I guess, is these different states of spiritual consciousness that we talk about. in terms of the Christ consciousness or Messianic consciousness or Buddha consciousness or higher consciousness or soul consciousness, what all that means, that's something we can get into more specifics of in this series if you like, or we can keep it up. We can talk on a different level and talk more physiology and whatever. But to me, it's a fascinating subject. And from the time I was young, it fascinated me because I had pets that I loved that died. And then later I had people that I loved that died. And that has continued through my entire life. And if you look at whether it's a family member, a friend, or a pet, here they are, they're alive. They're a living soul, they're having a life, they're having experience, they're interacting with you. And then whatever happens, happens, and this thing we call death occurs, which is not a state of being, it's an event. But this thing called death occurs. And right after that, you're looking at the same body. It looks the same as it did before, but it's not breathing or moving. And you can feel it. Whatever it was that made that dog, whatever it was that made that person or that friend or that family member that person, whatever it was that made them, their shell looks just like it did. It can still, it's even warm in the beginning. It just can't move or breathe. But it's really clear that that which made that them isn't there. So what was that? Where did that go? How did that just stop being? And if it didn't stop being, what happened to it? Where did it go? So those are like the age-old questions, of mankind. And the consciousness exploration is an aspect of that, trying to sort out life and death and what it means and how it happens. But that dramatic difference between this body that was alive a moment ago, that was someone you loved or something you loved, that now is dead, and that's gone. So what is that? So I'm going to stop there. Anybody have any questions or comments or anything you'd like to add at this point? And it can be things you understand or things you're interested in. It doesn't have to be something I've said so far tonight, but on this topic, anything you'd like to add or ask about or have the group discuss. Yeah, Nechama and Julie.
Oh, that's a very broad category.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
So this will be
Well,
our series for the next 12 years.
okay, I can start out. You're keeping it short.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, two things come to mind. One is I have always been sensitive to the energies around me.
Yeah.
An example of that was when I can't even remember when the volcano erupted.
Oh, Mount St. Helens.
Mount St. Helens so long ago. I woke up that morning and I just felt the energy that those people must have felt.
Mhm.
And I didn't know what was going on because I didn't know anything about it, and you didn't have it on your phone because your phone didn't
Yeah.
do that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was probably a couple of hours, but as soon as I heard what happened, I went, oh.
Mhm.
And I knew that was the sadness and fear and all these other,
Mhm.
dread that I was feeling. And I've had lots of other experiences like that, and had a feeling something was going to happen and it happened and that
Mhm.
sort of thing.
Mhm.
The other thing that you just were talking about, when Shimon spent the 19 years declining,
Mhm.
it's the major decline started with his first stroke. And I had to get to know this person differently, this person I loved and adored.
Yeah.
And what I got to do, and he had 3 more strokes, so personality changes happen with each stroke.
Mhm.
And it was interesting after the first one, he lost the patience. He's the most patient person in the world. And he lost that. And we had 2 12-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
Not a time to be without patience.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. Then 6 years later, when he had the second stroke, he got some of that patience back. He became a new person after each one.
Mhm.
And it was both grief giving and a gift to learn how to love a person so much more deeply,
Mhm.
to be able to see his soul,
Mhm.
because that is what really, I connected with in the deepest way. Yet without those strokes, I would not have known that.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, then when he was gone, just he was gone and something was missing, like you say.
Right.
Yet, even when a person's alive, we can't experience the loss of who they were
Oh,
and
yes. Oh,
get
yeah.
to know who they're becoming.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. That's just 2 things that came up when you were discussing these
Yeah,
things.
both really wonderful. Yeah, thank you. That's a wonderful addition, both of those. Thanks so much, Shahama. Somebody else. Oh, Anna, go ahead, dear.
Yes, there's two questions that I come up when you're talking about this. And one of them is how much of your response is a learned response? You know dogs very well.
Hmm.
I'm sure if you saw a dog and observe their behavior, you would kind of know
Hmm.
what the behaviors would be or what that dog would be, or even if the dog was ill, if the dog would get worse or not. I'm using that as one example. And me in the medical field, when I see someone or I hear someone and they have all this, they have this illness, they have this, they have this, and then I just know if they're going to make it or not.
Right.
And I've always thought that was just because of my medical knowledge and what all is going on. So my question is how much of it is a learning experience and then tuning in and honing that into the way we are living.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I wanted to at least point out to people is that there are supposedly a group of people called highly sensitive people, 20% of the population. Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah, the one who just spoke is one of them. Yes.
Yeah, Elaine Aron. And the issue is that 20% processes differently.
Mhm.
They'll walk into a room and they'll notice all the details about the room. So they typically have to pull away and process at a deeper level because they have so much information to process that other people don't process.
Yeah.
So some of this, at least in that one group of people, is it's one of those things. It's a gift, but it can be a negative if you're always picking up everybody else's stuff.
Right.
So
Right.
to get into whether or not people's emotions are our emotions or their emotions, there's the whole thing about this. So I
Mhm.
just wanted to point that out. I don't have any answers. I just wanted to point that out as something we may look at as
Yeah.
far as the makeup of people and the genetics and what they've inherited and
Yeah.
their own personal sensitivities.
Yes. Yes. That's really true and really good. I for many just an example, I'm sure this is true of Nahama too, or things like this. There was a long period of time where I had a really difficult time being in places like malls or crowds because everything that was going on in the sort of consciousness of the people in that crowd, I could feel, and it was really overwhelming and uncomfortable. And I'd often get nauseous or a headache, and I needed to, just what you said, I needed to kind of get out of that and kind of process. And if I could kind of orient myself to being able to be in it for a while, but it was a lot. And other people, of course, loved being in the mall and didn't bother them at all. But um, yeah, and those are really good points. And obviously the learned experience is a key component to all of that. I mean, there's the aspect of we know more through what we learn. Then there's also the aspect of our learning informs our ability to be able to communicate what we know. So the more we learn, we conceivably can get more effective at recognizing and communicating what we actually know, which is another facet of the learning process. But thank you, Anna. I appreciate all of that. Anybody else? Things you'd like to ask, share, bring to our attention? Brenda, hi. Or
Stephen.
Larry.
Stephen, I just had a question or maybe a comment.
Yeah.
I've wondered about a lot of this stuff, and my thought, it's just my thought, is nowhere in Scripture has it ever been written or recorded that we know of that it ever really completely come to mankind where they recorded it as far as, life after death or and I've wondered if maybe we're not supposed to know,
Oh.
because if we did, it would affect our life right now.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if I guess I've got enough stuff just to, as far as divine love, as far as completely, even the life that Jesus mirrored for us, I'm so far from attaining even that level that I've got so much on my life now to work on that, improving and connecting with things, and that if I knew really about the afterlife, if I needed to know that, maybe I would not excel because my thoughts would then be out there and not
Yeah.
focused on what I need to work on in this life. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Oh yeah, totally.
It's just a thought. I don't know.
No, that's really good. There's I like that. My short comment, because I think you'll enjoy this, Larry. Henry David Thoreau, when he was dying, a local minister came to him, trying to kind of save him before he died, and when Henry asked him why he was there, he said he was there to prepare him, to for the afterlife and to meet
Right.
God. And Henry said, "Well, I'm not interested, thank you. I'll take one life at a time." So
Wow.
it was kind of along the
Wow.
lines of what I mean, different and comedic,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was sort of his thing is I'm living this experience right now, and that's more than enough.
That's good, and that goes along with kind of a furthering thought that to me, if there's something, this is just my thought, that we really, really needed to know in this life, I think Spirit, God, Creator, whatever, would maybe not be obligated, but actually would want us to know.
Oh yeah.
So maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a good thing we don't know. I don't.
Yeah. See, interesting perspective. Yes.
I wonder about these things.
Yeah. You and me both, brother. Yeah. No, that's a lovely, another lovely take on all of this. So thank you, Larry. Appreciate it. Let's see, Eunice, you're up.
Actually, Ted would like to speak.
Oh, yay. Well,
Yeah,
hi,
hi,
Ted.
Stephen.
Usually I say Ted or Eunice, and it's always Eunice. So now I don't say it, and now it's Ted. You guys are just messing with me, aren't you?
Yeah.
I want to focus a little bit on consciousness, and I think we need to clarify. I don't know if it's clarifying a definition or not, but
Mhm.
I tend to think that you have what might be called mundane consciousness or general consciousness,
Mhm.
where thoughts your thoughts are flitting from one thing to another, whatever's affecting you in your life experience.
Right.
But then if you through whatever means, some people use chanting. I think it's a very good way to focus on specific thoughts or a way of thinking. And if you think of consciousness in terms of well, at any given moment you stop and think, well, what am I thinking about? And it's just a general thing, then that's definitely not what is implied by Christ consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So to get to something like Christ consciousness or money consciousness or whatever, it implies that a lot of your thinking is focused on that particular subject, whatever subject you're choosing to
Mhm.
focus on.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so if you are the type of person who wants to be closer to God, then you would probably seek thoughts which direct your attention to God. And I as an example of what can happen, in the Bible, the Yeshua is out there with his disciples. He's walking on water,
Mhm.
and
Oh,
Peter
good
wants
example.
to go to him. And as long as Peter is focused on Yeshua,
Mhm.
he continues to walk on water. But as soon as his attention is redirected, shall we say, or pulled away from and to the violence of the storm around him, that's when he starts sinking. So I guess that's just an illustration of how easy it is for fear to
Mm.
draw your attention away from what you really want to focus on, or the fact that you can easily get diverted from what your pursuit is in terms of thinking.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, thank you. Great addition, Ted, and a great example. That's a interestingly enough. Too bad you're not in the area. That Michael and I, we do this once a month Bible study class live here, and that passage from Matthew is the next one we're going to be actually studying in February. So that's that, yeah, good. That's a great example. Thank you. Let's see, Nahama Shuli.
This time it's both of us, but I'll let mommy go first.
All righty.
I just wanted, when Larry was talking about what he was talking about, it brought up a midrash in our tradition that, this, how our lip has an indentation,
Yeah.
that just before we're born, an angel goes, and we don't remember anything
Yeah,
because
I love that.
we can't learn our lessons. So I just wanted to share that.
I love that story. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. That's perfect for Larry's thing. Yeah. Shh. Right. Really good.
Okay.
Really good. Thanks, Nahama. Shuli, go ahead.
Okay. Firstly, well, three things. The first, of course, is the picking on, as always. Ani, Auntie, just an FYI, it was 28 degrees this morning
Mm.
in Tallahassee.
Congratulations.
No, wind chill, it was colder. It was supposed to be 5 with the wind chill.
Oh,
We
hush.
told you to come on up. It's warmer up here than that, and we could have parked you by the fire.
I take that as a BS because I know it was in the minus degrees, and no, I won't. So you ain't fooling me. Sorry. I won't go up there until the summer. You should know better. Me not freezing. No.
Actually, chilly in our house in the summer than it is in the winter because
Oh, that's for sure.
Yes, because you don't like summer. I know, Auntie.
Yeah, it's like the Arctic in the summer inside our house up here.
It's not one, it's the other side.
I know. We would make adjustments for you though if you came up. So
Oh, I know, but that'd be the only time I'd actually be able to hear you play because I know
Oh.
your instruments are both hiding.
true. Good point. Yeah.
So there is an upside to coming in the other. Okay. So the two things is one to mention to Larry, and the other to Ted. The one to Larry has made me think of The Good Place. And in the second season, the beginning of the second season with with Christian Bale and Ted Danson, and Ted Danson's having the midlife crisis technically
Yes.
of death because and it's just just that that ending episode saying that we know that we're technically born knowing that we're gonna die, that we're mortal.
Right.
And just so we're technically a bit sad all the time
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because we know that we're going to die, that our life is not infinite,
Right.
finite. So that was the first thing that made me think of. And with Ted, it made me, because me and Mommy have been back for a week, 8 days from Shefa's retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because of doing David's retreats, that even with Shefa's being not silent, because you were chanting songs, because of you can get into an altered state just by repeating lines over and over and over again.
Oh yeah.
So I've been regrounding myself, so to speak, all week because of being quite out of it. Not as much as last year. But so you can get into a very altered state and be completely out of it, technically high on life because of being in an altered state. So you can get into that form of awareness where
That's for sure.
You're completely unaware of your surroundings and just really feeling very high, so to speak.
I know. I love chanting has always been for me, even before I found, the Jewish chanting stuff with David and Shefa and all that. With the kirtans from India, chanting has always been a really powerful thing for me to enhance those more expanded states. But thanks, Shirley. I appreciate it. Aaron, and or Kaylee. Actually, I see both of you. So I think this one's Aaron. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's me. I'm going to try to go based off of what I'm hearing because I know I missed the beginning. Kaylee and I were finishing some grocery shopping. But on the topic of like knowing the afterlife or what that's like, and if we really can see or where it's written, all this kind of stuff, and everybody who throws it out there, I personally found, at least in my experience, is that that's the incorrect maybe question to ask, is like, what is the afterlife like?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's more approaching it from the perspective of what would you do if you knew?
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
I think if I think about, if I knew what the afterlife was going to be like, then what impetus would that give me to live in this life?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so when we dive into those experiences and when we try to understand it, it can be, I would say, too complex to fully understand simply because of all the different ways that various cultures and people have come to understand it. I mean, we even have the death practices where Buddhist monks will sit with a deceased person for, 8 or 11 days and like talk to them through, the various stages of, going through every level of heaven, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I guess for me, like I can have whatever ideas I want, but I personally think that it's asking certain questions like that. They seek to really distract us from what's really going on in the moment. And I think that's where, I spent a lot of time, seeking out like Christ consciousness and what all those things mean. And what it really brought me to, as far as in, what's after this? What comes next? Where are my loved ones? Are they really around? All of that. It was rather than a question of, can I achieve this altered state of mind or this higher state of being? But it was more of, what is my state of being? Because if I'm always trying to figure out what Christ consciousness is, then how can I be me? How can I be my own consciousness attempting to experience God in the world? And I think that's where, we can talk about being and expanding and growing, but if we're constantly trying to be something that is out of reach or something that is within reach, I think the whole point in a lot of different teachings is don't reach for that, because then you're missing the whole act of even being. Because then it's this constant reach for, well, I need to get to this state before I experience this, when it's like, what if just like, again, the know thyself, what if instead of knowing Christ consciousness, it's knowing Aaron consciousness, that I figure out, oh, wait a minute, and, get a good laugh at it. And I think that's something where we struggle so much in a lot of these practices, because I guess what I have found, and again, this is just my opinion and my experience, and everybody's is different, but like, when I returned to biblical study and getting closer to Christ and really shaping my life around him and seeking to understand and being challenged by a lot of the things that I was reading and asking whether or not, is this really right? Like, how do I know? Where does this come from? I think that having the bedrock, again, as it's funny, I was just talking about this with my buddy Chris about it, Lambert. It's that foundation. And I feel like unlike most other faith practices or things like that, for me, Judaism and Judeo-Christianity, there is such a solid foundation of which to build on, because even whether or not you believe in the full extent of the New Testament, it is amazing to see how they really do both play on each other and accentuate each other's in a way that a lot of those questions do get answered. I mean, even in conversations with Jesus, he talks about, in one of the, I think it was a Pharisee who asked him, like, well, what about married couples? Like, this lady married this person and he died, and then she married this person, he died. And then Jesus responds saying, well, it's not quite like that, in the next place to come. It's, they're going to all be together, and so it's one of those things where we get glimpses of it. But I think if we focus too much on it, we lose sight of why we're even here.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if that touches on the overall.
Oh yeah, it does. The actual, the part you missed at the beginning basically is it's just we're talking about different aspects of consciousness and awareness, and what is all that, and how do we work with it. So, and then I mentioned the part where you came in about the difference between the living and dead things, and wondering what all that is, and that's part of that search. But yeah, that's very insightful. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate it. You remind me of something a good friend of mine named Kaylee says. I'm paraphrasing her, but basically it's, God is active in our life right now. We all need to be present and pay attention to it. So, yeah.
He said amen.
Anyway, let's see. I think Eunice was, we got a couple minutes. Eunice, go ahead.
What came up earlier about not worrying or being focused on what's coming and what's after death. I sort of had an example at a retreat a long time ago, and what was being taught at the retreat had a lot to do with other levels beyond the physical level. And and the sequence and whatever, and what you would see and find there.
Yeah.
And my friend was saying, pardon?
Go ahead.
I don't really need to be learning and studying, all that stuff. She goes, I've got my hands full with, what I've got to deal with right here.
Right.
And I said, well, I do need to know, what's being taught about these other levels, because that's what is in my life and
That's
here.
what you're experiencing. Yeah.
So we were just, yeah, that was, those were actually my concerns,
Mhm.
and hers were quite different. So it was sort of an interesting, for me to see the different sides of
Yeah.
valuing what was being taught.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. That's a
And
really,
that's all there.
thank you. That's really good, Eunice. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think that besides recognizing that people are at different stages of understanding and therefore need different uh, information and teachings to help them move along, um, we go through different stages in our own life. There are periods where there are things that I studied 25 years ago that were important to me 25 years ago, and I needed to study them in order to be able to move in the direction my soul was supposed to go. But if you were to present those same things to me now, I'd have zero interest in them. They're not meaningful to me now. They're not helpful to me now, and I have no interest in being involved in them now. But they were. There was a time when they were. And so um, I think I think being patient with ourselves and watching how God has designed for us to unfold. I mean, how God designed me to unfold as me and how he designed Aaron to unfold as Aaron and so on. Paying attention to that and being patient with that process and trusting in that process is a really, really helpful thing, as opposed to taking a position of I have to figure it all out or the process won't happen, or I have to try to push and make the process happen at the speed I want it to happen. All of that, in my experience, has just led to a lot of frustration. So, yeah. So I think it's and as I've one of the reasons I really, really enjoy these particular types of things for me is that um, when people share, like several of you have tonight, sometimes what you share is something I already know or I'm thinking or that's the way I look at it, and it kind of reinforces that and supports it. And sometimes it's something I wasn't thinking or a way I wasn't looking at it, and it's like, oh my gosh, and I have this whole new facet that I hadn't recognized before. That's really helpful. So I think that the idea of spiritual communities sharing, genuinely having honest discussions, even if we don't all agree on particulars, but having honest discussions about what our experiences are and what we're gathering from them and how we're living our lives. Those things can be very helpful to people, even people who look at it differently than us or vice versa. Uh, because at the core, people like us, at least in groups like this, not just this group, are genuinely seeking, and what we're seeking helps each other when we share it, and I think that's part of the process. To wrap up, even when we go back to examples like Jesus, whatever we think of him and whoever he was and what his role is, it's really clear in the New Testament that even the people that Jesus taught directly and personally for 3.5 years, his 12 apostles, did not agree with each other, did not understand things that they had been taught by the same teacher, they in the same way, and they taught what they had learned from him differently than one another. Certainly there was a core commonality, but it wasn't a uniform thing by any stretch because each one was unique in what they brought to it. So I think that accepting our uniqueness and that of others is a helpful thing on the spiritual journey, instead of getting as caught up as we might in comparisons or judgments or deciding. God can sort out who's right and wrong. And from my perspective, I'm not qualified to do that. So I don't need to. So I just need to find what I'm being called to, and be as present with that as I can to fulfill what I'm here to do. And that's much simpler than figuring out everything. So anyway, I hope you all enjoy this series, and I hope you will keep contributing. And those of you who didn't get a chance to tonight, I hope you will. It's really lovely to connect with all of you. Thank you for supporting this. Thank you for being here. And yeah, for those of you who are in town next week on Saturday, Michael and I'll be doing our class on the very example that was brought up tonight on the walking on water story in the New Testament with Yeshua and Simon Peter. So we'll see where that goes, but that should be an interesting one. Anything else that we need to announce that I've forgotten? Did you want to mention the gathering at all? Or
I do, because we are a little way past half full for the gathering on the 28th of February. So if you are interested in attending, it's from 12 to 4 on Saturday, the 28th. It's a potluck and then a discussion. And if those of you who are out of town have time to make your travel plans, and those of you who are in town, we'd love to see you.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's just end with a moment of being attentive to how the Spirit of God is working in each of us, and how sometimes, despite appearances to the contrary, that same Spirit of God is working through the course of our world and what our world is learning. And trust ourselves into the care of that one from whom we've come. And may we be, in some way, assistance to those who are seeking that, and help them to take their next step in drawing closer. So we thank you, Lord, for this group, and we thank you most especially for your presence and wisdom and patience with us. And may this week be a blessing for each of us and for all those we encounter. Amen. Thank you all so much. So we'll see some of you soon, and the rest of you hopefully next Sunday. Have a great week.
Good night, and we love you. Bye-bye.
Love you too.
Night, y'all.